You may have noticed that the name of this course includes two components that may seem the same, but that in reality have different characteristics. When we talk about game-based learning, we are talking about using a game for learning purposes. A game is defined by Salin and Zimmerman as a system in which players engage in an artificial conflict defined by rules that results in a quantifiable outcome. Gamification, on the other hand, is the addition of game elements to non-game artifacts such as learning modules and learning management systems. In the first 4 modules of this course, we'll be focusing on game-based learning and its characteristics, which will also aid understanding of the gamification principles we'll be covering in Module 5. Though commercial games, such as Civilization and Minecraft, are often used in educational contexts, we'll focus on the use of games especially designed for learning throughout this course. Games that specifically serve a learning or training purpose are referred to as serious games. Now let's go back to Salin and Zimmerman's definition of games. The understanding of games as systems is crucial. A game's design dictates the possibilities and constraints for actions within the game space, encouraging experimentation and exploration for the sake of learning and fun. As design systems, games can offer representations of real-world contexts and events that range from the simplest to the most complex, depending on the purpose of the learning activity. Different game genres offer distinct possibilities for exploration and experimentation. For example, in adventure games such as Return of the Obra Dinn, players can interact with game scenarios and characters, collecting and using objects and information to solve puzzles. In platform games such as Mario, players develop physics-based skills within the game environment to overcome challenges in the game and reach an end goal. In resource management and simulation games such as SimCity, players control the different aspects of the system in order to achieve a goal or experience different intended or unintended outcomes. Class and colleagues discuss 4 examples of situations where game-based learning can be used. For instance, games can be used to prepare the learner for future learning, allowing them to practice specific concepts related to a subject or activity. Games can also be used to teach new knowledge and skills, or practice and reinforce existing skills. In those cases, learning objectives are more defined and structured, and as a consequence, some of the playfulness that is inherent to games may be impacted for the sake of learning outcomes. Games can also be used to develop learning and innovation skills, such as the 21st century skills we will be discussing in Module 4. Regardless of the situation, when we talk about game-based learning, we are talking about experiencing. Game-based learning requires that learners be players, actively engaged in a situation where they're supposed to do something that will lead them to achieve a learning goal. Games are composed of different design elements, such as game mechanics, visual aesthetic and sound design, narrative, incentive systems, and content and skills. These design elements can lead to different learning outcomes. For instance, effective use of spoken, conversational style text in games can improve learning. Furthermore, characters that are a part of a game narrative can provide pre-training and coaching throughout the play experience. Though visual aesthetic and sound design may initially seem less important than content and narrative for learning purposes, they also serve a crucial purpose in fostering emotions and creating engagement. Take a look, for instance, at the game Convene the Council, created by iCivics. Throughout the game, the player, who takes on the role of the President of the United States, interacts with a variety of characters with distinct visual and audio design inserted in a compelling narrative where the decisions, such as different budgeting priorities, feel like they have real consequences, and these consequences are shown in the game world. Class and colleagues also describe 4 theoretical foundations of game-based learning: motivational foundations, cognitive foundations, affective foundations, and social-cultural foundations. Games can, for instance, motivate learners by offering incentive systems and allowing for graceful failure. That is, making failure an essential and productive part of the play and learning experience. Games can also contextualize learning, facilitating integration with learners' prior knowledge and engagement in real-time problem solving. Compelling game narratives can appeal to players' emotions and increase engagement through interactions with in-game characters or empathetic agents. Collaboration and competition in games can also foster social interaction and lead to improved learning outcomes. It is important to note, however, that the theoretical foundations of game-based learning are not a definitive framework for developing serious games. Context and learning outcomes dictate the specific design strategies that will be adopted. Time constraints may limit the possibility of graceful failure in serious games. Narrative complexity and playfulness can also take a back seat for the sake of a straightforward learning experience in a game. Keep that in mind as you go through this course, and especially when planning your final project. Also important to consider is that effective learning is not inherent to any game. That means that designers and developers should, for instance, make sure that players identify with the characters and their actions have real consequences, like in our Convene the Council example. Design of problem solving throughout the game experience needs to take into consideration learners' prior knowledge and current skill levels. Content in games needs to be provided just in time, and skills need to be practiced so learners can apply them to problems and effectively achieve learning goals. Like any learning, effective game-based learning needs to be well designed and thought of.